Dear children, this is Aniruddha, PGT Biology, Mount Literacy School, Jhansi. In the previous section, we had talked about spermatogenesis, or the formation of male gamete or sperms. I had talked about the structure of sperm also. In today's session, we are going to talk about oogenesis, that means the formation of mature female gamete, which is also known as Graafian follicle. Okay, and it starts when the child or the girl or the female is inside the womb of the mother. Inside there only the process starts in female. Okay, so what happens in this? Millions of oogonia, that means gamete mother cells, are formed in each fetal ovary. Fetal ovary means in the ovary of the girl who is inside her mother's womb. Okay, so there are so many millions of oogonia, gamete mother cells, which are formed inside. What happens? Those gamete mother cells start the division, and you must be knowing about the meiosis process, which has meiosis 1, meiosis 2. So in the meiosis first, the first stage is prophase 1. So what happens to those oogonia or gamete mother cells? They start division and they enter in prophase 1 of the meiotic stage division, and they get temporarily arrested there. That means they stay there for a longer while. The process stops there only. Okay, and the process has to go on, but it stops there in that particular moment. Okay, and in that stage, that oogonia is known as primary oocyte when it is in prophase 1. So what happens? Each primary oocyte is surrounded by more layer of granulosa, and when the primary oocyte is surrounded by the granulosa layer, now it is known as primary follicle. When the girl gets birth and she becomes 8 or 9 years old, that means when the puberty stage comes, that primary follicles inside the female, 60 to 80,000 primary follicles are left in each ovary. Each ovary contains only 60 to 70,000 80,000 primary follicles, which are arrested in prophase 1. And in every 28 days, one side of ovary produces one ova from the primary follicle when they become matured follicle. You must be watching one diagram. There is written primary follicle, then tertiary follicle, then Graafian follicle, so and then ovum. So first of all, primary follicle converts into tertiary follicle, secondary follicle, then to tertiary follicle, and then to Graafian follicle, when it contains an antrum or a kind of cavity which is filled with fluid. Okay, so primary follicles are again surrounded by so many layers of granulosa, and they become secondary follicle, and ultimately they transform into tertiary follicle. When they come into tertiary follicle, they have, if you see the diagram at the tertiary follicle, it is showing an antrum. Antrum means one cavity which is filled with filled with fluid. As long as it is filled with fluid, it is known as tertiary follicle. And then this tertiary follicle converts into Graafian follicle, or the fully matured follicle, which has primary oocyte in prophase 1. Okay, then in the 28-day cycle of menstrual cycle, on 14th day around, this Graafian follicle reaches to the wall of the ovary, and it is ruptured. Ovum is released, and the entire Graafian follicle remains inside the ovary. Inside the empty Graafian follicle, blood is filled, and that Graafian follicle now becomes corpus luteum, and corpus luteum starts producing one sex hormone in female known as progesterone hormone. Ovum is released. If you remember the diagram of ovary here, there is fimbri in fundibulum. When the ovum is released, it is caught by fimbri. The fimbri catches the ovum which is released by the ovary, and it goes to infundibulum, then to ampulla, and somewhere in ampulla and isthmus, somewhere at the junction of ampulla and isthmus, the ovum remains there for a little while and waits for sperms to come. If sperms have come, there is fertilization. If sperms do not come, that ovum moves in the uterus, and after 28 days the uterine wall and everything gets ruptured around it along with the unfertilized egg or ovum, and that goes out of the body in the form of blood and bleeding. That is known as 3 to 5 days of menstrual flow in the menstrual cycle. Okay, so this is all about the oogenesis in female. The process of release of ovary is known as ovulation, which mostly happens at the 14th day of menstrual cycle. Okay, here is the menstrual cycle, which has 4 phases. Menstrual phase, 3 to 5 days when the bleeding occurs. Follicular phase, when the follicle becomes mature in the Graafian follicle, and ovulation. Next is ovulatory phase, when the ovulation takes place on the 14th day, and then the luteal phase, when the corpus luteum is made from the Graafian follicle after when the blood enters inside the Graafian follicle. So this is all about the menstrual cycle as well as oogenesis. In the next session we are going to talk about the fertilization. Okay, so till then, have a nice day. Thank you very much.